Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Pagliacci Schumer went on The View to converse with those man-hating shrews. And interesting what he had to say. He's very concerned about oligarchs and the future of the republic, of course. He's part of the vanguard for our democracy.
So a lot of people responded to the anguish. I appreciate it. I wake up 3 in the morning sometimes so worried about the future of the country under these oligarchs or klepto, whatever, oligarchs, I guess.
Oligarchs. I mean, oligarchs. Rich people, we've gone through this many times. Rich people on their side, great. Rich people not on their side, oligarchs. Got it. Also, I thought this was an interesting messaging tact, which was to resuscitate an old nugget from the Obama era. Oh. See if this conjures up any memories.
And you know what their attitude is? I made my money all by myself. How dare your government take my money from me? I don't want to pay taxes. Or, I built my company with my bare hands. How dare your government tell me how I should treat my customers, the land and water that I own, or my employees. They hate government. Government's a barrier to people, a barrier to stop them from doing things. They want to destroy it. We are not letting them do it, and we're united.
Okay, good.
Wow. Very convincing. But, I mean, does that remind you of anything? You didn't build that. You didn't build that. You didn't build that 2.0. That's what they're going with. You didn't build that. Billionaire corporations not paying taxes. I mean, it's the new Marxist chestnuts. They're really sort of running around bumping into each other at this point. And Chuck Schumer protesting their unity was a nice capper. For more on this, please be joined by Batya Ungar-Sargon, author most recently of Second Class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Men and Women. Batya, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, see, I don't understand. I saw you on Bill Maher, and we want to talk about that a little bit. And you said that you were a woman of the left and that you still are. But, I mean, if you're a woman of the left, then aren't you cheering Chuck Schumer taking on those oligarchs on behalf of our democracy, getting up at 3 a.m. to worry about our democracy for you?
It's so amazing. For every billionaire that backed Trump, Kamala Harris had 2. She got 75% of donations from hedge fund managers, 95% of donations from the top 3 management consulting firms. 65% of Americans who make over $500,000 a year now are Democrats. And she won with Americans who make over $100,000 a year, whereas Trump won with Americans who make under $100,000 a year. It's just unbelievable because the Democrats have become the party of the rich, and they're so in deep denial about this. I just have to say, when I was listening to Chuck Schumer say that whole, you're so right, it is, you didn't build that 2.0. It's so godless. Like, if you read the Bible, I'm an Orthodox Jew, you read the Talmud, God abhors ownerlessness. There's like a deep respect for property and for building things and for ownership and for taking pride in what you built and what you own and in building up your community and having a sense of noblesse oblige, like owing something to the people around you. And this is what the Democrats fundamentally don't understand anymore, because their coalition is now the very poor who own nothing and the very rich who feel that they owe nothing to this country and to the working class people who they rely on to survive. So it's really become a very godless, dark place. And then they lecture you, like, from this position of hating America and hating their working class neighbors and having utter contempt for people who work 10 times harder than them and make a fraction of what they do, from their perch in their, like, gated communities where they hire private security because they want to defund the police. They have the chutzpah to lecture hardworking people. Like, it's so disgusting.
Well, it sounds like you're MAGA, not MAGA lefty. So explain to our listeners what exactly, young lady, is MAGA lefty.
I have to say also, this is a really interesting thing. So when I still consider myself left because I think that a lot of what MAGA is represents things that were like traditionally working class values, which was what the left was supposed to be. The second I said anything nice about Donald Trump, the left absolutely canceled me, eviscerated me, were like, you're not one of us. Like, you say a tiny thing wrong that they don't like, oh, I think this person has some points about immigration, you're out. Whereas when I say I'm a MAGA lefty, you should just see how warm the response is from MAGA. Come on in. This is Big Ten. There's room for everybody here. And I'm so grateful for that. I guess what I think Donald Trump is kind of sort of like a New Deal Democrat. Like the New Deal believed in respect for religion, socially moderate, but also pro-worker, pro-labor, and anti-war. And that's really what the MAGA movement is to me. It's very anti-war. It's very pro-peace, peace through strength. Doesn't believe in getting entangled in everybody else's business around the world, believes in putting American workers first, and then is socially moderate and respectful of, at where everybody's coming from. So, and I think it's such an amazing and brilliant coalition because what President Trump did was he captured the common sense middle of this country, and the Democrats, because they can't admit that, he forced them to defend the kookiest, most insane stuff, like men and women's locker rooms, Trend Agua, Grand Opera, because they have nothing else. So I think it's a really cool movement.
Yeah, and then I know you've commented on the new batch of podcasts that are populating the digital space from the leading lights of the left these days, Gavin Newsom, Michelle Obama. But speaking of which, Gavin Newsom had Tim Walz, so he's not just trying to reposition, or maybe he's trying to reposition his reposition because the repositioning by interviewing conservatives hasn't been going very well for him. So he had Tim Walz on. Boy. And the conversation devolved quickly because, Tim Walz is a moron. And this is what Field Marshal Walz had to say.
How do you fight it?
This
I think I could kick most of their ass. I do think that if they wanted to. I know I can run them, but I don't know if we're going to fall into that place where we want to. Okay, we challenge you to a WWE fight here type of thing.
What is wrong with him?
I can kick most of their ass. Well, first of all, that's not a subject. A verb agreement, but
him and Charlie Kirk, Charlie Kirk would destroy him.
But anyway, what you see going on in terms of the different approaches, Gavin Newsom trying to be hail fellow well met, interviewing Bannon and others. Meanwhile, J.B. Pritzker, for example, coming over the top to be, as outlandish and reckless a critic of Trump as Jasmine Crockett or AOC. Just interesting to see the divergent approaches to positioning from those on the left.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what we're seeing here really is just fundamentally jealousy of the power and the youth and the vigor of the MAGA movement right now. And it's coming out in all these weird ways. And I think conservatives are not used to being the object of jealousy, so it's very hard for them to recognize it, but that's fundamentally what's happened is it's now cool to be conservative. There was amazing polling that came out that found that TikTok actually makes people more conservative. And, just all of these young people, Trump won the majority of 18-year-olds. Young people, young men especially, there's just an immense energy and joy and happy warrior thing happening on the right now. And I think there is just so much jealousy because the Democrats thought they were the party of cool and they were the party of young people. And it turns out it's the exact opposite. And so they're kind of having this weird, wait a minute, what? We're the lame ones? We're the cringe? We're the old? Yeah, you are.
Well, that was interesting. You're referencing a piece over at Vox.com and research that they wrote about that suggested that if every registered voter had voted in the 2024 election, Trump, instead of winning the popular vote by 1.5 points, he would have won by 5 percentage points, which is a popular blowout in a national election. I mean, it just speaks to exactly what you sort of started out by saying and what others like Rui Teixeira have pointed out about where the Dems are right now. They are the party of the Brahmins, but that is just not anywhere near a majority of the country. And as they're doing their postmortem, I think more and more of them are realizing how out of step they are. But they still have that primary electorate that they've got to appeal to, which is why you see people like J.B. Pritzker taking the same approach that Kamala Harris and the socialist Spice Girls in the House took.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Like, they don't really have the confidence to say, look, this is what we stand for, and so we're going to push this, and then we're going to try to grow our coalition because, the thing that they stand for right now, that Brahmin base, which is, as you point out, a huge minority, 20% of the population, if that, what they want is open borders, no deportations of criminals, trans women's sports. Like, it's everything that is like totally at odds with where the vast majority of Americans are at. Like, most Americans are deeply tolerant, pretty pro-gay. The Trump administration has appointed some of the highest ranking out gay people in American history, but they're not pro-trans. Like, there's a difference there, and that that kind of commonsensical approach that President Trump is bringing to the table. Let's talk to unions. Let's appreciate the work they do, but also not make it possible for people who don't want to belong to a union, right? That commonsensical, like, growing the coalition by just having a deep and abiding respect for the American people and the American worker, now unthinkable to the left because they'll lose that 20%. That has utter contempt for the working class, and that is their primary motivating factor.
I wanted to ask you quickly about Michelle Obama's podcast that she has with her brother, Craig Robinson. You've been listening in, and have you learned anything?
It's amazing because I do think the First Lady is a very gracious person, but she has really become very, very far to the left. She's picked up on a lot of the grievance culture and grievance language, which is very funny because she's now worth about $70 million, according to reports, with her husband, former President Barack Obama. And so you have this situation where, like, the complaining is so at odds with the reality, the material reality of life. And her podcast, the same thing that ails the Democratic Party ails this podcast. It is produced for and by rich women. And so all the guests are very, very wealthy, like Michelle Obama. And so all of the advice they dispense is for other rich people. It's very alienating to men and very alienating to average people. And the tragedy is that Michelle Obama was raised pretty poor. She was raised in a lower working class. She has the secrets that so many Americans are desperate for of how to claw your way out of poverty into the wealthy, into the upper middle class. She won't talk about that. She'll only talk about what interests rich women like the rest of the Democratic Party.
So as a woman who characterizes herself as left, as MAGA left, but what, if anything, concerns you about Trump or MAGA or where the Republican Party is?
Very little concerns me about President Trump. I love the tariffs. I think they are being rolled out a little bit chaotically, but the thought behind them is really strong. I'm worried about the next generation. I'm worried about, for example, I think Trump was really able to neutralize the abortion issue because he came out and said he supports exceptions for rape, incest, mother's life the way that 90% of Americans do. He said at a different time that he supports abortion up to 12 weeks, and he wanted it to be a states' rights issue. If the next generation, the inheritors of the MAGA movement, sort of go back to where Trump moved the party away from, which is this kind of very pro-life mentality, I think they could lose a lot of the Democrats who showed up, working class Democrats who showed up for the Republicans for President Trump. So I would be, if they go back to the kind of free trade policy that President Trump did away with to push this protectionist agenda, they will lose not just those Democrats, but a lot of the working class support that President Trump drummed up. So I think it's really important for Republicans not to misunderstand where Trump's appeal comes from.
Batya Ungar-Sargon, author of, most recently, Second Class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Men and Women. Batya, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. God bless you guys and all of your listeners.
Thank you. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one. Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, I'm Ken Mariotti, owner of Woodland Windows and Doors, a third-generation family-owned business since 1969. We know you're bombarded by choices when shopping for new windows or doors, so we're inviting you to experience the Woodland